All right, what's up, everybody? We're getting started just a touch early, but actually technically a little bit late. We're getting over about 8 o'clock here. Let's get in our friends over on Twitter and on Facebook, and then we're going to get underway on this beautiful Thursday night. All right, we're on Twitter, and we are live on Facebook. What's up, everybody, and welcome in. We are getting started just a touch later. My name is Garrett Chapman. This is the Falcons Podcast. We are live over on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter. And we're going a little bit later than we normally do, so I apologize for that. I was on babysitter duty. My brother's out of town, so I got to watch my beautiful niece and nephew. And naturally, it got kind of pushed back a little bit, as it always does, So I had to spend some quality time with my wonderful niece and nephew, and I'm always thrilled about doing that. But I'm also thrilled about the chance to talk some Falcons football because it is Combine time. I love the NFL Combine. This is one of my favorite times of the year because this is the next generation of Falcons football players, of just the great NFL players. I've been watching NFL Network as much as I possibly can. Good Morning Football. I throw that on the morning, and then I'm turning it over to, I'm trying to get as much NFL content as I can because it's about a month gone by without football. Without Falcons football, it's about 2 months. So I'm starting to get a little stir crazy, and you're going to see this kind of over the next couple of months. I'm going to go a little bat wild, So I'm just trying to get back to some football. And this is the closest thing that we have here for the next couple of months, at least until April when some of the players and coaches and stuff report to Flowery Branch. But give me a follow at GChapATL. That's the best way to stay up to date on everything that we have coming out over there on Falcons on SI. It's going to be a busy week. It was a busy day for me, taking care of some kids and trying to get all my NFL Combine stuff taken care of, and then trying to take all that stuff in. But it was a blessing, absolutely. But look, we got a big show set up for you guys tonight. It's a little bit later than normal, so maybe we'll have a different audience. Who knows? But if you're coming back live, or if you're coming back for maybe just to listen into the podcast, try to join us Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's at 6 o'clock. We try to do that every single Tuesday and Thursday so that we can have kind of a consistent little theme going, because I think it goes pretty well for you. But we'll talk a little bit of NFL Combine here on the show today. I'm also going to get into I want to go back into this Ian Cunningham discussion about picks. I put this out on social earlier today, and it generated a bit of a reaction. So I want to get into it. And I mean, it's important. And I also heard something from Eric DeCosta, one of his old bosses. And that's going to be something that we talk about here on the show today. NFL Players Association, they released some grades. We're going to get into that a little bit here in just a minute. And then pre-combine players to watch. I know it's Thursday. We have the first group of players have already gone. 2 groups of players, if you include place kickers. But I'm also going to give you some, I'm going to zero it in, right? So we're going to look in at the day 2 players that we can watch who have some upside. So I'm calling day 2 players with day 1 upside. I think that works pretty well. So that's what we're going to get into. But I see, I'm also going to take your questions. If you have any questions, drop them into the comments. I'm going to try to get to as many as I can. If we get too many and then you really want to get yours to the front, super chat. That's the best way to do that over on YouTube. Make sure to do that over there. Or if you just really feel so obliged, I appreciate you. I try to bring you some great content, and I always always appreciate any super chats, anything else you can do like that. But again, thank you so much in advance. Michael Ronquillo, what's up, my man? Always great. I got the double hearts there from my boy. Let's see. AJ, what's going on, everyone? Garrett, good to see you too, Mr. AJ. Michael Ronquillo comes back and says, Ohio State's Sony Styles at a 43.5 inch vertical jump. He also ran a 4.540. That guy's going to the top 5. I mean, he might be pick number 5, but he is going to be just an absolute beast. That guy's different. You see some of the, and maybe that helps the Falcons. Maybe a linebacker goes off the board a little bit earlier, and then maybe, I don't know, it may or may not. It's going to be a top 5 pick. It's going to be one that's not necessarily going to help the Falcons all that much because they're just not in that range to really get up into that because they don't have a first round pick. They would be picking at 13. I've hurt myself by going and looking at some of those mock drafts. I guess you could not hurt myself, but it's like I've gone and looked at some of those mock drafts just to see kind of like what the Falcons would be getting, and oh boy, it would have been pretty nice. Instead, they have James Pierce, which he had a great year last year. We got to give him credit for that, but depending on the off-field issues, we'll see. So it's just a big old TBD on him. Hopefully he can come back, but we'll see. Keith says, your opinion, are we going to need a replacement for James Pierce Jr.? All right. Well, so speaking of which, it's too soon to say. It's just too soon to say. It's an ongoing legal matter. I would imagine. So based off of some conversations that I have had, some conversations that I've heard, I think that he is going to be present at events that would be coming up in April. That could be coming up this summer. He might even be at training camp. We don't fully know. It's just so early in the process. Talking about James Pierce Jr., of course, he's dealing with some domestic violence issues, not issues, charges, like federal, like literal charges. I don't want to call them issues. I don't want to undersell how serious of a matter it is. He's dealing with some felonies, and he also struck a police officer with his car. I mean, like, the list goes on and on. It is not great for him. But at the same time, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if his ex-girlfriend's going to testify necessarily. She said that she would. It's just so early in the process. We're not going to do that for another probably couple of months, maybe even several weeks. But again, that's a TBD. As soon as I hear something, I will let you know. But it is just not at that point yet. But I would assume until something changes, he's going to be present. I'm assuming at all team activities. I doubt very heavily that he's not going to be available to the media. Let's just put it that way. I'm not even going to beat around the bush. He's not going to speak to the media. It's too risky for the team. It's too risky for him in his legal state. He's not going to talk to the media until after all this is done. AJ comes back, says, what does an ideal offseason look like for you? Any specific players you'd love to land in free agency and the draft? Oh, wow. I love this question. Okay. Let's see. An ideal offseason. All right, let's see. It starts with Michael Penix getting healthy. If Michael Penix comes back healthy, maybe he gets back a little bit earlier than expected, and then he can come in and be available end of July. We'll see what he can do. And then we get a firm answer on what Michael Penix is. You bring in a decent second option. So whether that's Joe Flacco, whether that's a younger person, it remains to be seen. But you get an answer at quarterback. That's point number one. Point number two, you bring in some defensive line depth. I love what we have in Rook. I've said this several times here on this podcast. I said it on my personal show over on 92.9 The Game. I love the idea of getting a lot of defensive linemen and guys who can rush the passer. I think it's just so undeniably valuable. It is critically important for the Falcons to have that. They have a good foundation in place right now. I think even with the James Pierce Jr. issues off the field, and again, I call them issues. I'm just going to use that term going forward. Not trying to belittle the issue when I say that. I just want to make that very clear. But with his ongoing legal issues off the field, I still think that you have some pretty good foundation pieces on this Falcons defense. The front seven is strong. I think you have to make a decision on Caden Ellis. But ultimately, I think in a perfect world, you bring him back on a 1 or 2 year deal that's affordable. If that's something in the range of $8 million, I think that's a jackpot. But if it's not, then I think that there are some really, really good linebackers that we can talk about here on this podcast tonight. But then the next point is you have to find some wide receivers. I think that there are some more budget-friendly wide receiver options that you can find because you just need dudes. You need guys who can flesh out that wide receiver room. And then at that second pick, I'd love to see Omar Cooper from Indiana. I think that he is ultimately going to play his way up into the first round potentially, or maybe even the very beginning of the second round. But there are going to be some really good players in the second round that are going to be available, whether it's Cooper or maybe it's Malachi Fields in the third round or something like that. I think there are some high value wide receivers that you can go get in the first two picks for the Falcons. But ideally, again, you're asking me what my ideal thing is. Ideally, the Falcons trade back. And we're going to talk a little bit more about picks, and more picks coming up here in just a little bit, just talking about some comments from Ian Cunningham, specifically going back to one of his former bosses, something that Eric DeCosta said in a podcast that just resurfaced on social media. And then I saw it right before we did this, and I'm like, dude, we're going to go talk about this. But yeah, I mean, that's really the biggest thing. I mean, and then there are a lot of really great defensive linemen that you can go take a look at in this draft, in this free agency class. Some that do not appear to be as expensive as previously thought. I mean, it could be pretty affordable there in the free agency market. Go take a look at that at Falcons on SI, or just Google the defensive line players to watch in free agency and just at Falcons on SI. I laid out a whole bunch of free agency targets, and I don't have that in front of me. I don't want to forget anybody, but John Myers is a great one, just off the top of my head. DJ Reader is one that pops up on top of my head. But if you can get some guys and really flesh out that unit, I think that looks pretty good. But I got a hair in my mouth. Excuse me. But you got a lot of options. Excuse me. Goodness gracious. I have a golden retriever, if you can't tell. But very good question. Floyd comes back, says D-line, nose tackle, and cornerback priority. Cornerback's not a priority to me. I mean, correct me if you feel otherwise. Drop it in the comments and tell me why I'm wrong. I just think that you need to go get at least one corner, whether that's re-signing D and maybe drafting one. I think in the perfect world, if you're trading back in the draft, then it becomes more of a realistic possibility. You've got Mike Hughes under contract next year. He's not awesome. He's not your first choice necessarily to go play corner, but he's affordable and he costs you more money to cut him than to have him on the team. So you've got your outside corner. You've got AJ Terrell's here. AJ Terrell is fantastic. Billy Bowman is a bit of a concern, I guess you could say, coming off of an Achilles injury. But I mean, do you believe in CJ Henderson and Kobe Bryant coming in depth positions? They were okay. They were fine. Like I would say that they're not every week starter mentality type person. Not mentality, but like my mentality about them is not a starter every Sunday. But I think that they can come in spot starts. I mean, it's piecemealing, but that's kind of the situation the Falcons are in. I mean, this is not an offseason where you're just going to be able to upgrade at every single position. You have a lot of needs. There are a lot of needs. And I think that you have to actually like iron these out. If you're going to go get a quarterback in free agency, that's going to cost you pretty good money. Unless you really go dumpster diving and you want to go get Trey Lance or something, which is, again, that's fine. I wouldn't be surprised if they go do that potentially as a third quarterback option. But at that point, if you want to get defensive linemen, if you want to get wide receivers, if you want another tight end, maybe a linebacker in free agency, then cornerback all of a sudden is just getting kicked further and further down the line. And it's just not top 4 for me. Maybe it's 5, I'd say, but that's just kind of my opinion on the matter. And that's kind of where I stand on it. I know Scott completely disagrees, and that's fine. We just have different opinions. Let's see. GATX boy _ speak says, what's going on, GC? What's up, my friend? Falcons family, the new era is here. Do you think a linebacker like Quay Walker could replace Ellis? I think he could. I think that ultimately the Falcons would be, in my opinion, better suited to draft a linebacker. The more I've looked at the linebacker class, the off-ball linebacker class, I have been just enamored with some of these guys. I think that some of these dudes are fantastic. And in a perfect world, I mean, I'm assuming Omar Cooper is going to be gone. In a perfect world, in my opinion, you trade back in the second round, you potentially get a second day 2 pick, and you use that one on a linebacker, one on a wide receiver, and one either on a defensive lineman and an upside defensive lineman, like an orange or something like that, or maybe a corner at that point. That's one where I would end up using a corner, or maybe even a quarterback. That's one where you can do that. Quay's, I think, going to price up and up. I think he might get up into like the 12, 13 million potentially. I don't know necessarily. He's younger. He's coming on to his first big contract. He's very athletic, but he has some holes in his game too. So I've got a couple of question marks on Quay Walker. I like his upside. I think he has some, but ultimately I'd rather have Caden Ellis over Quay Walker. I know Quay's younger and he's got a little bit more athletic upside, but I think Caden Ellis also matters a lot to this team. And if you can go find somebody who can do that job and the physical job of what he does on the field, I think that'd be very difficult to find in free agency. I'd rather look to the draft to go do that. Floyd comes back, says wide receiver. I agree. Wide receiver is the biggest physical need that this team has right now. Chris Bell Jr., not a bad choice. I don't think he's going to be on the option. I don't think he's going to be on the board for the Falcons at 48. He's also coming off of an injury that ended his season last year. I think in December, I want to say, but I think he's going to be off the board. Let's see. AJ comes back and says, I love Quay next to Diablo, but he is a different player than Caden is. Yes, he definitely is. AJ comes through and says, my ideal offseason, land John Franklin Myers. I agree. I love John Franklin Myers. I think he's an unbelievable option for the Falcons. And Tim Settle on the defensive line. Okay. Extend Drake London. Oh, yes. Absolutely extend Drake London. That's going to be something that pops into my head. I was just going off the dome when I was answering the question, but Drake London also is included there. Omar Cooper. I love Omar Cooper. Lee Hunter. Lee Hunter and Omar Cooper are probably going to be gone. They're going to be I'll spoil a little bit for you, but as far as my day 2 players with day 1 upside, those 2 guys are on the list. And they're both probably going to be gone. I think just based off of what I expect from them, what I've seen from them, just from what I've watched, just as somebody who watches a lot of college football, those 2 are really damn good players. And I think the more that you see them test and get their measurables and everything like that, I think they're going to go up draft boards. Unfortunately for the Falcons. Walk away with 8 total picks. I think if they can get 8 picks, that'd be fantastic in this draft class. They need at least 6 to 8 picks, at least 6 to 8, because that's how many legitimate players that they need to infuse this roster. This roster needs talent. They need that next era, like that young class, to bring in that energy next year. And I think that would be pretty important. And if they can get 8 picks, 9, 10 picks, 10 picks seems ambitious. But I mean, look, that's what Ian Cunningham said the first year that he was up in Chicago. They had 6 picks. They turned it into 11. That's what they're fit. You can do it. And look, let's just dive into this part of it. Yeah. And AJ, he comes back and says, I'm just hopeful Omar Ali falls. I am too. Ultimately, I think I wrote this in my article that I put out that we're going to talk about here. If Omar falls or Lee Hunter falls, I'm taking that person. Like, that's just the person that I want. Those are my top 2 people on the board right now. I don't think both drop. I certainly don't think, I don't think either will drop. I certainly don't think both will drop. But if one does, the Falcons need to take it. Is that fair? I think that's pretty fair. But speaking of that point, I mean, like, we talk about what I mentioned it, and I didn't do it justice because there was just so much information that we had to talk about on Tuesday, just because, I mean, with Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts and all of this other news that was coming out last week, our last podcast on Tuesday, we had a lot to get into. And I feel like I didn't give this really enough time to flesh out and kind of get into a discussion with this. So I'm going to try and bring that to you right now. Ian Cunningham said on Tuesday on 92.9 The Game that this is going to be the last time that the Falcons will have just 5 picks. And that ultimately there's a chance that they stay with 5. I don't think that they're going to stay with 5. That's not necessarily the way that I see this playing out, because he also said that they hope that it's not the case. It tells me that they want to trade back. Maybe players can get involved in this. And I said on the last podcast, I talked about how Drake London could potentially fetch some players. And I think somebody got upset with me because I said it's taking at least 2 first-round picks. I mean, maybe. He's in the 5th year of his deal, and there's no guarantee that you're going to re-sign him. And we'll see. It's not like they're bird rights that there are in the NBA, so it's just, I don't know what you're going to fetch for him. That's the whole point with that. But I know some people have talked about Jesse Bates. Some people have talked about trading Kyle Pitts. I've talked about trading Kyle Pitts specifically. I think Kyle could make a lot of sense, because then you'd have the non-exclusive bird rights, or not bird rights. I just said bird rights because I was talking about the NBA, but the non-exclusive tag that's on him, I guess that would transfer to the new team. And then that actually gives you some reason to want to have Kyle Pitts on your team, outside of the fact that he's just a really good player. And that's why it's different than Drake, is all I'm trying to say. But it's more going back to the philosophy of more picks is just the better way to do it. And the more that I've gone through these draft processes, and look, I'm just covering the team, right? I've gone through a bunch of these now since I graduated from college back in 2018. I go deep into this draft, and I follow every single year, and I do deep dives on these players. And I'll tell you what, I mean, for a lot of them, and I'm not in on these interviews, there are other things that these guys are obviously learning about these players, but the point of what I'm trying to make is the difference between a lot of these guys is not that much. It's a razor thin margin on a lot of them. And Eric DeCosta, the Ravens general manager, Ian Cunningham's former boss, he appeared on a podcast. And I don't know if this was this year. I think it was a couple of years ago that he actually did it, but it's not the point. He used a lot of the same verbiage that we heard Ian Cunningham use at the podium on Tuesday. And that's why it popped out to me. He said that we want more swings to play. And sure, that's kind of a generic sort of term, but it was the way that he said it and so emphatically. I'm like, okay, so Ian definitely heard him say this behind closed doors. Ian is taking what the Ravens did and directly correlating it to what he's going to do in Atlanta. That's why it popped. And I literally, when I tell you I heard this a couple of minutes before our podcast came on. And it tells me that this is really the identity that he wants to have in Atlanta. You need more swings to the plate. You need more opportunities. You need to take more chances because you don't know which guys are actually going to hit. And you get into what Eric DeCosta said. He called it the loser's curse. And this isn't his thing. I think he actually was citing something from some Stanford economists or something like that. But he said effectively that when teams leave the draft, the differences between most teams is marginal, if it's different at all, right? Because there is a bit of luck that's involved in this draft. Because you don't know if a guy's going to get in trouble off the field, like we're seeing with James Pierce. You can assume that he may or may not. I mean, we don't know for sure. You don't know how weight training is going to go. You don't know how he's going to react to a certain scheme. What happens if you fire a certain coach? What happens if there's just the point is there's so many variables. What happens if he's hurt? There are lots and lots of variables, and it's impossible to account for every single one of them and to plan. They do their best. They do a really damn good job. But at the same time, you're just not going to get them all. Like, that's just not the way that it works. And the way that DeCosta said it is that it makes trading up in drafts, aggressively trading up in drafts every single year, a bit silly. And that's effectively it's not a shot at what the Falcons are doing, obviously, because this is DeCosta talking about his model and the way he goes about things. But that's what the Falcons did, and what it does is it hamstrings you down the line. You don't have as many swings at the plate. I'll use that term again. You don't have as many swings at the plate, and you're really going all in for a player who may end up being marginally better or worse than the player who you could have taken after that. That's the model. And the only way that you can ensure that you get as many good players as possible is by trading back and getting as many swings at the plate as you can. That is what it is. That's what the Falcons have to do. And he also said, effectively, that people are going after the exact same things. He equated it to a bunch of buddies going to the bar or going to a nice restaurant, and they're all going to order. There's a big menu. There are 50 different things on the menu, but they're all getting steak or they're all getting chicken. No one's getting the vegetarian option. No one's getting fish. And so it's just the way everything pans out. You need as many swings at the plate as you possibly can. And the only rational approach is more at bats, make more picks. That's what it comes back to. And I thought that DeCosta saying that actually it resonated with me. And I think that that's going to be something that the Falcons are going to be doing. But as far as schedules and stuff like that go, if you guys have any questions about that, drop it in the chat and I'll be happy to answer whatever I can. Hopefully I made some sense there. But the defensive line, the edge rush, and the linebackers, they go on Thursday. So the time we're recording this podcast is Thursday night. So we just saw them. Defensive backs and tight ends, they go on Friday. Running backs, quarterbacks, and wide receivers, they go on Saturday. And then the offensive line, they finish it out. They have the bench press on Monday. But they go on Sunday with all their workouts and stuff like that. But I think it's going to be fun. So I love the combine. It's one of my favorite times of the year. They can get into the future and everything else like that. Michael says, Garrett Chapman, did the Atlanta Falcons release a wide receiver today? They did. Yesterday they did. They released Cordero Hodge. It's a cost-cutting move. He's just a special teamer, really. I mean, he's a good football player. Doesn't mean that they're not going to go back and re-sign him. He just wasn't going to make $3.2 million, $3.5 million or whatever it was. He's going to save somewhere the Falcons are going to save somewhere about $2.6 million or so. Good for the Falcons, and maybe he comes back. We'll see. David comes through, says Kyle Louis, Malachi Lawrence, and if he's even there, sorry, I was having trouble reading. Even there at 79 after going off at the combine. Danny 2 in the third, since I'm counting James Pierce Jr. out at least a year. Zane Durant has helped himself a lot at defensive tackle. And then David comes back and says, on the good side for us, Lee Hunter isn't wowing in spandex. Fair enough. LOL, kind of giving old man look. If that gets him to 48, I'm good. If that gets Lee Hunter to 48, then jackpot. I think that's fantastic for us. I'd be over the moon if we can get Lee Hunter at 48. And ultimately, I have not gone in and looked at Lee Hunter yet. That's one piece that I have not been able to dig into yet. So I just want to give you guys fair warning on that one. But ultimately, I think that sounds pretty good. I think that sounds pretty good to me. AJ says that's because Derry was a goof. I mean, I don't want to call him a goof necessarily. I want to be respectful. But, I mean, he had a very aggressive strategy. And that was his tendency. He was very aggressive. He'd fall in love with a player. We saw him do that with Kyle Pitts. We saw him do it with Bijan Robinson. We saw him do it with Ruka Roro. He did it there. He did it with Arnold McCady, with James Pierce. I mean, we saw it on several different occasions. Matthew Bergeron, he did it with him. And then you talk about trading up and trading back, whatever. He made 5 draft day trades, and 4 of them were up. All right. Or no. 7 draft day trades, maybe 7 day draft day trades, whatever it is. It's 6 were up and 1 was back. Whether it was 4 was up and 1 was back. He traded back 1 time, and that one he ended up getting Drew Dahlman and I think Richie Grant, I want to say, and that was his first draft class that he did it back in 2021. I actually realized that he drafted a tight end at number 4 overall, and he was like, "Hey, shoot, I need to go get some more value." But he got Drew Dahlman, who ended up being a pretty good player. And then I think it was Richie Grant was the other player on that. What didn't work out, unfortunately. AJ comes through, says, just thankful we don't have to endure another season of Fontenot, Pistol Boy, and Find a Way Man in the building. Hey, now. Oh, come on. Yeah, we'll see. It's a new regime. It's a new era. We'll see. But speaking of the old regime, we got player grades, man. The NFL Players Association. I know that this was supposed to be withheld, I guess, or just not released to the public. And what they didn't realize was the fact that, every single player has access to this, and you're not going to keep this from everybody. What are we talking about? So take a look at this on the screen. This is, according to ESPN, somebody told ESPN, and then naturally they're going to release it to everybody. This is where the Atlanta Falcons fall. So going off of, actually, ironically, that comment that was just made, this is the Falcons. So, of course, you go down this list, you see treatment of families was a B+, home game field is a C-. That's not great. So Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the field, not in great shape. Food and dining area, A-. I've seen it. It's fantastic. Nutritionist, dietitian, it's an A. It goes from F to A+, by the way. Locker room is a B, which I think is very low considering the fact that they just redid it. It's brand new. Training staff was an A. It's a beautiful training staff. Training room is an A-. It's a great training room. I've seen it myself. Weight room, I did that one. Strength coaches is an A. Position coaches is a B+. Offensive coordinator is a C-. So that's Zach Robinson. Yikes. Defensive coordinator, A, Jeff Ulbrich. There's a reason this guy's coming back. The players loved him. They got great results. Offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, getting a C-. Yikes. Head coach gets a B+, which, I mean, players loved Raheem. He was always a player's coach. It was always something that he got along really well with him. Manuel got a B, or Marquise got a B+, special teams coordinator. Team travel is a B+. General manager is a B+, so that's Terry. And then team ownership is an A, which is great for Arthur. I mean, it tells me that Falcons are one of the highest rated teams in the entire NFL. These numbers right here tell me that, and B+ is pretty damn good. Like, this isn't grade school when you need to go get all A's or whatever. You're not going to get all A's. It's just not how this works, really. The fact that this team is living in the A's tells me that the Falcons, the organization itself, is doing a very good job at taking care of its players, which I love. I think that's great. But I also think it's worth noting that we need to get into this one, because obviously you take it with a grain of salt. This is a different franchise. This is a different set of circumstances. Like, there's a lot more to this. Like, contextually, we need to keep context involved in this, right? So like treatment of families, D-. Screw that. Home field, game field, B-, whatever. Let's go all the way down, all the way down, all the way down. Offensive coordinator got a D+. Oh, that's Tommy Rees. That's Tommy Rees. I don't like that very much. Defensive coordinator got an A-. That's Jim Schwartz. He's not the Browns anymore. Head coach, that's a C-. That's Kevin Stefanski. So I think that there's, again, I'm going to say it again. We need to take it with a grain of salt. It's a different team, different franchise, different set of circumstances. It's just something to keep in mind. But I thought it was interesting. And I also think that it was a little bit funny to me that the NFL thought that they were going to be able to, all right, we're going to give you a cease and desist, and we're not going to get any of that. All right, sure. Oh, man. So David says Lee is near the bottom in all the things he did. Keenan was the only one lower in a couple of areas. I'll take a look at it. I appreciate you, David. You're talking about one of the great prospects in this draft class. I'm going to go dig into it here in a little bit. But let's dig into, speaking of that, this is the last thing I'll do here, and then I'll take a couple more questions. If you guys have any super chats, anything that you want to get straight to the front, just let me know. But I'm going to dig into some of the day 2 prospects with day 1 upside. We talked about Omar Cooper. I've talked about him being the Falcons' top option, really, at this point, assuming he drops to them at 48. He's 6 feet tall, which not awesome, but ultimately for the type of player that he's going to be, he's got a great frame and he has great speed. And that's what I'm going to be looking for on Saturday. I want to see what his 40 time is. I want to see what his shuttle times are. I want to see the way he moves. But he was a 3-year contributor and he won a national championship after going for nearly 1,000 yards. He potentially was the best player on that team. And that includes Fernando Mendoza. Like Omar Cooper was a killer on that team. And if you can get that guy here in Atlanta, I think that'd be awesome. But staying with the wide receiver position, let's go to Chris Brazzell, the second. He's got great height. He's got great speed. He's somebody who went over 1,000 yards. He can pile on touchdowns. He was a 4-year player in college, but he really broke out last year. He was always a high potential guy, but he was also somebody who you need to see some of that mid-level route running from him. But I think his high end is really good number 2, which I think could be really good for this team moving forward. But I also get some question marks just about Tennessee wide receivers. I've seen a lot of them not work out, especially with this Heupel offense, Josh Heupel. It doesn't always translate in the best way to the NFL, so that's just something to keep in mind. I want to see him actually do his route running and stuff like that. Jeremy Bernard from Alabama. He's 6'1", 209. So the first, Brazzell, of course, he has pretty good size. But the other two, not awesome size. He's 6'1". He's got decent enough right there. But he's got really good athleticism. He's somebody who already played with Michael Penix. He played with him at Washington. He followed Kalen DeBoer from Washington. But, I mean, he had over his 2 years there in Tuscaloosa, 114 receptions, 1,600 yards. He was somebody who had a chance to go get I believe, a Biletnikoff Award for best overall wide receiver in college football. But he fell off a little bit later, just like everybody did kind of over there at Alabama alongside of Ty Simpson. But he started off really hot, and he took over. He wasn't supposed to be the top option, but he became the top option. Good player. And I think you can get him potentially. That's one if you trade back into the second round or trade back from pick 48 a little bit deeper into the draft, then I think that'd be one that you can potentially look at. But Malachi Fields, he's the other one. He's that last wide receiver, I guess you could say, that you can get and on the second day. I think you can get him in the third round. If you can get him in the 70s, I think that would be very good. But he reminds me a little bit of Drake London, like just a little bit, which I don't know if that's what you want necessarily, but he has some athletic upside. I mean, maybe what you want to do here is you just pile on the big bodies, right? Imagine having Drake London on one side, you got Kyle Pitts in the middle, and then you get Malachi Fields going up the other sideline. How awesome would that be? I mean, nobody's guarding that. Like, you can't physically guard that. You just put together a basketball team, and then you have Bijan Robinson coming out of the backfield. Good luck. And he's got an incredible catch radius. I mean, but I want to see if he can come out and play the Z receiver. I think that's going to be something that we need to keep an eye on. But even still, I mean, Drake does play some Z. He gets into the slot a little bit too. I mean, that's going to be something that he does. So maybe Malachi can come out and play X receiver on this team. So I think that gives you some versatility and some ability to move things around there. But Anthony Hill Jr. going to the linebacker position. I talked a lot about how much I loved these linebackers. Anthony Hill, he comes from Texas. That's another guy who could be gone by the time the Falcons turn in their draft card. But this is a dude with elite size. He's got off-ball versatility, and he can do it on all 3 downs. I mean, he gets after the passer. He had 4 sacks last year. He had 3 forced fumbles last year. He had 2 interceptions last year. He's an instant impact type of player, right? He's a guy who's going to come into the middle of the field, and him next to Divine Diablo. Oh my God. And then Jake Goldie, I mean, from Cincinnati, he's the exact same type of way. He was on Bruce Feldman's freaks list. He was in the Shrine Bowl, but pulled out at the last minute, but he's got a great frame. You look at what he can do in his 10-yard split, 1.54 seconds. His shuttle time is off the charts. His broad jump, his vertical for his size, it's unbelievable. And he's just an athletic freak. And then if that Goldie and Hill have kind of that same profile of just highly versatile, can do a lot of different things, and they're just very athletic. And putting them next to another equally athletic Divine Diablo is fantastic. But going down to the defensive line, Lee Hunter, we've talked a good bit about him at 320 pounds. He's got long arms. He's going to be a plus run defender. And I think in time, he's going to turn into a guy who can kind of put together a really nice bull rush. We'll keep looking at his pre-draft workouts. I need to go back and look at a lot of those, but if he does fall to the Falcons at 48, assuming Omar's not there, then Lee Hunter's going to be my guy. Christian Miller, he's another one of those types of guys who he's coming from Georgia. He was heavily in a rotation. So if you look at some of his numbers where 10 tackles, a sack and a half last year, it's not going to wow you, but he's got some upside. And he's got a really good frame. He doesn't necessarily have the anchor that some of these other guys do, but he's going to be a strong contributor and he can play right away. And I mean, death taxes and Georgia defensive linemen. You want to go get the best possible thing. It's like drafting a tight end out of Iowa. They're going to be pretty damn good. That's going to be Christian Miller. So he's one who, if he is there and say Lee Hunter's not there, Omar Cooper's not there, Christian Miller is probably my number 3 right now. Peter Woods from Clemson. He's one that I'm a little hit or miss on right now. He was down in 2025, and he's somebody who plays with a lot of violence. He's somebody with his arms aren't great, so he's going to let offensive linemen get into his body a little bit more, but he has that high motor to kind of counteract that a bit. He's a guy who's just going to come in and play hard. And having guys, look, if you're going to get him in the 3rd round, assuming he drops to you in that 3rd round, I think that Peter Woods would be a fantastic day 2 player for the Falcons who can come in and just immediately at least provide some of that intensity, that bull rush down the middle. I think that could be a lot of fun. But Dominique Orange, that's a guy who from Iowa State, he's a guy who for a Falcons team that struggled against the run, they were in the 20s in terms of rush EPA allowed per game. This is a guy who I really think, his nickname is Big Citrus. Big Citrus. That's awesome. And he's tough to move around. He's a literal freaking sphere. He's an orb of weight at 325 pounds. And he's literally an anchor in the defensive line. So you go get a guy like that. I love these defensive linemen that you can find on day 2. I think that if you can take one of those guys that I just mentioned, whether it's Dominique Orange or Peter Woods or Christian Miller or Lee Hunter, then I think that you're going to get a really good player who can contribute very early. But if you're going back to the offensive side of the ball, depending on what the Falcons do with Ryan Newsel, the further I get along, he's an affordable player that I just have a hard time thinking that they're going to move on from him. But if they did, you're going to have a hard time finding a better person than Jake Slaughter to do that. The Florida center, he's a 2-time all SEC type of player. I think he had an injury, but he didn't have an injury, but he was a 2-time. I'm thinking of the Connor Lew from Auburn, but he was a 2-time captain. He's got good size. I think that he's a smart player. I mean, you get a guy who's an all SEC guy, that's a pretty big upside, so I think that that'd be pretty good. But for the folks who want the corners, Chris Johnson's a good one. He I just think that there are other needs at the second round pick. I mean, he's going to be a guy that is going to be around at 48. I would assume he's going to be somewhere like 45 to 50 in that range right there. But he'd be an instant elevation. I mean, he's a good cover guy. He's a guy who can go between zone and man. He's a good enough athlete that it's going to translate effectively into the second cornerback position at the very least. I think he can be a really good player. And if you want to immediately get your cornerback room into the top level, then Chris Johnson would be a great choice. But Colton Hood is one that I had on this list until the more I've heard from him today. So he's one that I heard a couple of comments from him. He says that he is not participating in any drills. He had an ACL or a knee injury, I think it's like 430 days ago at this point, and he's still not able to participate in drills. That's very scary to me. That freaks me out. But physically, he has everything that you want. He's a very physical corner. He's somebody who can play up on wide receivers when he's healthy. He's a willing tackler. He's going to get in, mix it up, and he's one of those rare corners that really wants to make a hit. I'm really worried that his medicals are not going to check out. And that's one where if you don't have your medicals, you're not healthy, then if you can't play, then that doesn't matter to me. Elias Stowers, the tight end. This one was one if Kyle Pitts wasn't there, but even if you match him up with Kyle Pitts, I think that would make a ton of sense. It'd be kind of a luxury pick with the one that I just don't see the Falcons doing necessarily. But if he can drop to the third round, or maybe if you trade back and he's still on the board, then I think then you can look into that. But maybe if you trade Kyle Pitts, I think this is probably the closest comparison that you can find to Kyle in this draft class. But those are your day 2 picks with day 1 upside. Anybody you recognize? Anybody you think? Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think about all those. I'm going to try and take a couple more questions before we get going. Oh my gosh, we had a bunch of questions. Sorry about that. Ouch, Reese getting no respect, worrying. Again, we don't know the context of the situation. It could just be because the team sucked. You know, they were averaging like 15, 16 points per game. I think it went up to 17 with Tommy Reese. But he was young. He's the same age as a lot of the players. He was in diapers by the time that Joe Flacco was playing high school football. You know, I mean, just think about it that way. I mean, he wasn't an older guy. He's young. And maybe it was a respect thing. Who knows? I'm not going to speculate because I don't know any more than that. I just know the grade that he got. But I don't want to let it dissuade anybody from the type of coordinator that he could potentially be for the Falcons. Let's go to Dalton Rogers. He says, would love a cornerback, wide receiver, defensive tackle, linebacker, need to draft and grab some of these guys and double up for agency as well. I agree. Trenton says, man, have I missed the show? No, you're here. You're here now. We're going. Halsey comes through and says, possible the Falcons are more focused on having 2 good tight ends over wide receiver needs. No, they shouldn't. I would assume that they want another good tight end to pair with Kyle. And that's one where if we see them look into going and getting a Stowers or something like that, then that tells me that they're putting a very high value on the tight ends. And that's kind of the direction that people are going. You're going with the multiple tight end looks. The Falcons did it a lot last year. You see the Rams were doing it a bunch last year. And generally speaking, if Sean McVay does something, then the rest of the league tends to follow that guy. But that's what he was doing. So Trenton comes back, says, sounds like you're talking about something I like at linebacker. Another athlete like Diablo would be scary. I agree. I really agree. I think there's and that's one of those things, Trenton. The more that I continue to do some research on these guys, the more I think that these linebackers could be just slam dunks. They could be slam dunks, but what good's a linebacker if an offensive lineman gets to the second level every time and punches him in the mouth before he can even make an impact? If you don't have a defensive line, it's a moot point. It says Miller is not the biggest, but man, when he makes that initial impact, he's a beast at shedding the block and making a stop. I agree. Good call. Trenton says, thoughts on Barrett Carter? Let me take a look. Are you talking about Oh, from the Bengals. Okay. I am not super familiar with Barrett Carter. I'll be completely honest, and apologies for my golden. He's probably got to go to the bathroom. I got to take him out here in a second. I'm not 100% familiar. He isn't one that I've seen in free agency yet, just being full disclosure. AJ says Deontay Corleone, Cincy, DeMonte Capehart, Clemson, Xavier Harris. Good one. I like Xavier Harris. Some 4 to 6 round guys I'm looking out for. I agree. Harris, I think, is somebody who I've seen fall in. I do PFF mock drafts just because we have a subscription for it. So that's the one I use because I had full access, and that's really important for me. But I think Xavier Harris is somebody who could be a fantastic fit for the Falcons. I like that one for sure. Dalton Rogers says Falcons are going to trade Pitts for some draft capital and could possibly look at moving Bates as well for cap savings and possibly player trade or draft compensation. We'll see. I don't see how you get better by trading Jesse Bates right now. I think he just offers too much to you. I would actually personally extend the guy. He gives you a lot. I don't know why you'd ever want to trade him, but I see what you're saying. The team needs picks. They need picks like they need air. You're just not going to improve on Jesse Bates. Not soon, but it's also the safety position. It's not the most do or die spot. And if you really think that Xavier Watts can take over and be that guy, great, then go do it. But then all of a sudden you're creating a hole for yourself that didn't exist before. David says for guys that linebacker available when we pick, Trotter and Kyle Lewis is also showing some surprising all-around athleticism faster than expected. I see you. I'm more looking at some of the things that I read pre-draft. Again, I got to dive into the stuff that happened today. I was on babysitter duty all day. That's why we're going a little bit later in the pod. David says Capehart was fast today, looking good, 10-yard. Corleone, I like 2, 4th, 5th. Orange is a 3rd round possibility for sure. I like Orange in that round. I think if you can get Orange in the 3rd, I think that's a great selection, great value for him there. Trenton says, watch some all-22 from Cleveland last season. Kyle Pitts will be asked to step up his run blocking or it will kill some of the run schemes almost. I agree. I mean, he's got to do that anyway. I mean, that's just the next stage of development. But guys, he's also 25. Like, this is a guy, and it sounds almost like an excuse when you put it that way, but it's not. It's just a reality. He's 25 freaking years old. He's a kid, so he's still trying to develop in this league. He came into the league at 20, and I know Terry Fontenot, I wrote an article about that earlier. I mean, he came out and put out some comments about, not put out comments, but he went on Good Morning Football and reacted to some of that stuff. And Kyle Pitts getting a franchise tag, and it sounded like he was more making excuses for himself about why it didn't work out. But maybe you shouldn't have taken a freaking tight end at 4 overall in 2021, your first ever draft class, when you had an aging quarterback, an offensive line that had needs, you had wide receiver room that needed stuff, you had all kinds of issues. I mean, shoot. You could have taken Micah freaking Parsons. You had 10 all-pros, first-team all-pros sitting behind you, so it's okay. Let's take a tight end. But no, Kyle's got some room to improve, and I think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I'm being a little coy about it, but he's a good player, and I think that he is scratching the surface of his potential. David comes through, says, hot take for the free agents. We might lose in the holes we have in other places. I think we can get by at corner, a position for next year, or free agent rotation guy. I agree. That's kind of how I stand. It's not a hot take to me. That's my take. And if that's a hot take, then David, you and I agree. I just don't think that corner is as big a deal as some people have to say. I think that you have enough bodies in place there that you can get through another year. It's not the best. It's not the worst either. There are a lot more positions that are much worse off than that spot. Let's see. Dalton, if Bates restructures his contract, it makes sense, but he's making too much money at this point. He's a good player, but a large cap hit for an aging safety. Let me make sure how much he's actually making. Because if it's what I think it is, he's not going to restructure it. Okay, yeah. So he has a void year for next year. He actually has a void year in 27, 28, and 29 worth $2.5 million. Yeah, so his dead cap is $18 million. His cap hit is 24. Yeah, that's a massive number. Yeah, so if you cut him, or excuse me, yeah. So if you do a post 6-1 trade, you save $13 million against the cap. So this is one that I would, and I said it before, you can do effectively the same job by just not restructuring, by extending him. You just extend him, and then you get the cap hit a little bit down. You can knock it down a little bit. You can add some void years a little bit later into the contract, and then you make it work because he's still, how old is he? 29? Yeah. So he's still got a couple of years of really good football left. I think if you can get him up to about 32, then that makes a lot of sense for me. But I see your point. I mean, it's something that makes sense. It's just, we'll see. AJ, big thank you, my friend. Really appreciate you. Says, appreciate you, Garrett. You doing these. You're the man. I appreciate you, AJ. That's very kind of you. Big shout out to you, my friend. Trenton comes through, says Jack Cochran from Kansas City. Is that the linebacker? He's a bit younger. I think I did something on him. Yeah, he's a bit younger. Hold on. He's had a 1-year deal with them last year. Yeah, he's a free agent. I think I did something on him. I'm not. He was a depth player for them. I do think so. I think so. I'm not super familiar with him offhand, so I don't want to say something that I'm not 100% sure on. That's just kind of the way I am. I believe I do. But he was a depth player for that team. A good player. But he's one who, I mean, this team needs depth. They need depth like that, like they need air to breathe. But guys, I really appreciate you guys. Big thank you. All right, so Trent, yeah, you just confirmed it. We did 50 minutes, a little bit later than we normally do, but you know what? At the end of the day, I got to hang out with my niece and nephew, and I think that's the most important thing in the world for me, at least. But I still got to come here and talk some Falcons football with you. So I really appreciate you guys. Y'all make this show possible. Y'all do ask so many fantastic questions. And I'm just trying to bring you guys a great show every single week. So I really appreciate you. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends too, because we do this, maybe not tonight, but we do it every other night on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6:00. But no, let your friends know, share it with them. Just try to grow this thing. Let's try to get this thing up off the ground and do kind of keep building, but I really appreciate you guys. Tons of great questions from you guys all tonight. AJ, big thank you to you, my friend. But we'll do this again on Tuesday. And then if there's some other big news that we need to jump in, maybe we will. So keep an eye out for that. So make sure to subscribe to the pod. But until then, give me a follow at GChapATL on Twitter. We got a lot of content that's coming out over the next couple of days. But look, great podcast. I really appreciate you guys jumping in and had a lot of fun with it. So until next time, let's go Falcons.